What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to my channel. Finally, a sit-down video where I'm going to tell you the entire thing that led up to me discovering that I had parathyroid/thyroid cancer. Back in 2016, I was working like 9 days a week. All right, so there's not 9 days in a week, but I was working 9 days a week. I had so many jobs as a nurse. I was working full-time PRN. I was also teaching clinical, maybe 2 different clinical, and I was teaching RN to BSN students in the classroom. Let's just say I had a very heavy load. And for what reason? Who knows? Because at that time, one of the things that was being promoted, not only on social media, but just within the nursing world, was hustle, 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 grind, grind, grind. And there's money out there to be made. So by all means necessary, let's go out there and get that money. So back in 2016, I remembered being at the hospital with a group of students, and we were getting ready to leave. And I stopped at the nurse's station and I kept saying, oh my goodness, this pain in my back is going to kill me. I had pain in my right lower back, and that pain had been there for maybe 2 weeks. And I kept saying to myself, maybe I hurt myself when I was trying to pull a patient up or transfer a patient because my back keeps hurting. But I'm thinking, okay, it's going to resolve. It's going to resolve. I was taking Motrin, taking Tylenol. I'm like, this pain is going to go away eventually, right? Because as nurses, our backs are compromised the most. The pain was as if someone had a knife and they were just constantly twisting it in and out, in and out. The pain continued, the pain continued. And I was just like, this back pain is going to kill me. But I ignored it. I continued working, continued taking Tylenol. I even went as far as started going to acupuncture for my back. Never once did it dawn on me that this could be something internal going on in my body and that I should seek medical care. I just always thought it's going to go away. Heat, acupuncture, Tylenol, rest, stretch, yoga. I wasn't thinking at all. Now, aside from the really bad 10 out of 10 back pain I was having, my hair started falling out. I had my hair cut in a short hairstyle, and at the time my natural hair was relaxed. And I remembered combing it, and it would shed so bad, like clumps and clumps of hair. And I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? So the back pain, my hair is shedding. But remember, guys, during that time, I'm working. So I think in a 7-day period, I probably only had 1 day off. So I didn't even have time to say, well, let me go see the doctor. My mind just wasn't there. All I was thinking about was working and trying to manage these things that were going on. So the back pain, my hair started shedding. Then I started losing weight. Like my clothes, I noticed, was getting looser and looser. My scrubs were getting looser. And still, guys, at that point, I was like, I knew something was going on, but I still wasn't thinking sickness. I was thinking, okay, I'm probably working too much. Once the semester ends, and all of this started in like late April of like 2016. So I'm thinking, all right, I only have 4 more weeks of the semester. Once the semester ends, I'm going to be good, right? Wrong. The semester ended, the back pain continued, the weight loss continued, the hair loss continued. Even my hairstylist at the time, she was like, your hair is coming out, like something's going on. You need to go get this looked after. So the first thing I did, which was the ultimate wrong move, I had really good insurance. So I made an appointment. I overrode my PCP and I made an appointment with a neurosurgeon because the back pain I was having, I said, this definitely is from me either like straining my back. I probably have a bulging disc. Let me go see a neurosurgeon. Went, made an appointment with the neurosurgeon. He worked me up, did an MRI, all of that. Results came back. He was like, I don't see anything. He said, the most that I see in your tailbone area, there's a little bit of arthritis, but he said nothing that should be causing you this pain. He said, do you want to try physical therapy? I said, sure. Wrote me for physical therapy. Went, was getting physical therapy, manual physical therapy at that. And I remembered one of the therapists saying, he was like, He said something else other than whatever is going on. He's like, there's something more to it. This just can't be back pain, right? Because the back pain was also so crippling. Like I was taking time to walk. If I dropped something, like I literally, the idea or the thought of having to bend down to pick it up was crazy. So finally now I said, all right, the semester ended and I'm like things are only getting worse. My appetite now started like decreasing, which contributed to more weight loss. And then I remember just being very thirsty, very thirsty. Like I was always wanting water, never food, just drinking water at all times. Finally, I said, you know what? I need to go see my doctor. The semester had ended. I had a little bit more free time. I scheduled an appointment with my primary care doctor, told him what was going on. He drew a bunch of blood work. And I remembered being at work one day and I got a phone call from his secretary. And she was frantic. She's like, I've been trying to reach you. I've called your cell phone. It keeps going to voicemail. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm at work. She was like, yes, we know that you work at this hospital. And so we called, and you know, the reason why I'm calling you is to tell you that we need for you to go to the emergency room. And I was like, go to the emergency room, ma'am. First of all, I'm at work. There's no such thing as leaving the floor to go to the emergency room when I'm not like dying or exhibiting any kind of symptoms other than really bad back pain, extreme thirst, loss of appetite, weight loss. I'm like, I can't do that. She was like, okay, well, let me call Dr. Loomis back and let's just see what we can do. Maybe we need to have these labs redrawn. What happened was, on my CMP that he drew, which is the lab that looks at all of the electrolytes in your body, kidney function, your glucose, my calcium came back at a 17. Normal calcium ranges from between 8 and let's say 10. Mine was 17. So when my primary care doctor saw that, he flipped out and he was like, no, this girl needs to go to the emergency room. Anyway, the secretary calls the doctor and the doctor is like, all right, fine. You're at work. I get it. You can't go to the ER. He said, I need you to go have these labs redrawn. I'm faxing the requisition right now over to the lab at the hospital. Walk over there and get your labs drawn. So I was like, fine. I took a break, walked over to the lab, had my labs redrawn. It resulted like a couple hours later that my calcium was a 16.9. So still very much so elevated. My primary care doctor calls me back and he was like, are you off tomorrow? And I said, no, I'm working again. He said, all right, I don't care what you have going on, whether you're working. I don't care if you have an appointment to have dinner with Jesus Christ. He said, I personally made an appointment with you with Dr. Khan, who is an endocrinologist that is across the street. He said, on your lunch break, you either leave work early. He said, I don't care what you have to do, but you must go see Dr. Khan tomorrow. He said, it is very difficult to get an appointment so quickly with an endocrinologist. You cannot mess this up. He told me, as a matter of fact, Dr. Khan, who's my endocrinologist, was so impressed with these numbers, he wanted to meet the person who had a calcium of 17 that was still functioning and still working. Like he said, I have to meet this person. I won't even take my lunch break. Tell her to come to my office on her lunch break. So I went, spoke with my manager. I was like, hey, had my calcium redrawn. It's still elevated. Tomorrow I work, but on my lunch break, I need somebody to cover me so I can go across the street to have this endocrinologist appointment. And of course, managers, in retrospect, I think this is what put a lot of the bad taste that I have for nursing. Let me turn my phone off. Put a lot of the bad taste I have for like the way nursing administrators handle their staff. It put a bad taste in my mouth because she was like, I'm pretty sure your calcium is not that high. It's probably just like a fluke or whatever the case is with the lab. You'll have to ask one of your coworkers to cover you while you're gone. And I was like, okay, cool. So thankfully, my good girlfriend, Obi, shout out to Obi. Obi was working the next day and she was my buddy. So she covered my patients for me while I was gone. Went to see Dr. Khan the next day on my lunch break. And the first thing he did when he met me was, he looked and he walked up to me and he said, do you mind if I touch you? And I was like, no. He felt my neck and he was like, there it is. And I'm like, there is what? He said, you have an adenoma. And I was like, what? He was like, look at your neck. He was like, you don't feel that? And I'm like, no. He was like, no one saw this. Like, he's like, you went to your primary care doctor. You said you've seen the neurosurgeon. You're working in the hospital around doctors. No one noticed that you have a lump right here in your neck. And I'm like, no. He said, okay. He worked me up, ordered me to have a bunch of labs. And to this day, I'm forever indebted to Dr. Khan because he said to me, he was like, there might be a time where you don't feel well. He was like, you might start feeling bad. And he was like, I'm really worried about you, because he said with a calcium of 17, most people would be in the emergency room on the floor begging to be seen. He said to me, if you feel bad at any time, like if you start feeling sick, he said, go to the emergency room. But on your way there, I need you to call me so that way I can directly admit you to the hospital so you don't have to wait. He gave me his cell phone number and he said, I don't care what you have going on. If anything is wrong, you need to call me, text me, do what you need to do to get in touch with me. And I was very impressed at that moment, because how many doctors really give out their cell phone numbers to their patients? Like I've seen it before, but very few doctors, really give their personal cell phone number out. And I was like, okay, wow, this must be really serious. That let me know that my calcium of 17 was really serious. And I'll be very honest with you, like a lot of the major systems, like endocrine, it's not my strongest. I'm not really strong when it comes to those systems. So this was a whole new learning for me, to learn about my calcium being elevated and what that potentially meant. Not only was my calcium elevated, but my PTH hormone was through the roof. I believe normal PTH, I should have checked the labs, but guys, I'll put it on the screen. Normal PTH, I believe, is anywhere from between 12 to 55, or is it 12 to 45? My PTH was 960 something, which is obscene. That is just crazy to have a PTH hormone that high. Let me explain to you the pathology a little bit, because a lot of people initially kept saying, oh, your thyroid, your thyroid, your thyroid. And I had to explain to people, it's not my thyroid. It is my parathyroids that's causing me the problem. So everyone obviously has a thyroid. The thyroid has two lobes. On each lobe, the left and the right lobe, we have 2 glands. So in total, we have 4 parathyroid glands, right? 2 on the left, 2 on the right. Now, the purpose of the parathyroid gland is to secrete PTH hormone. And the purpose of PTH hormone is to maintain calcium balance in your body. So if the PTH increases, it's pulling calcium out of your bones. Anywhere that, anywhere calcium is stored in your body, the PTH going up will cause for your bones to release calcium into the bloodstream. So the higher the PTH, the more calcium the bones are losing. And that is not good. And that's what was happening with me, is that my PTH was so high, causing my calcium to be so high. Hence the reason for my bone pain. So you guys heard me talk about that back pain I was having, like someone was twisting a knife. That's the only way I can describe it. It was like someone had a knife and was just slowly twisting it in my back. That's because I was losing calcium out of my bones, and bone pain is one of the classical signs and symptoms of an elevated calcium. Also, my hair loss, my loss of appetite, my weight loss. On top of that, I also had a very foggy memory. And I remembered going to work and having my assignment. Of course, I work in the ICU, so I get 2 patients. If, depending on the acuity, if we have downgrades, I'll get 2 downgrades. And in ICU, it just really depended. And I remembered having patients and having the hardest time completing my documentation. Like the patient care, I can do. But to sit and focus on clicking through those Excel slots, like on Cerner, where I have to chart my assessment and chart my intake and output, it took me forever. And let me tell you guys, I'm not even gonna lie. There were times that I left work where I didn't even complete my assessments. And I would just go home, my brain in a fog. And I didn't know at the time all of this was because my calcium was elevated, because I didn't know. I didn't go to the doctor right away, remember? So I didn't know, my foggy memory, my inability to concentrate, my inability to complete tasks was due to this elevated calcium. I also remembered, I pride myself on being an avid reader, but I remembered going to Barnes & Nobles at one point and purchasing books. And I remembered I was reading one book and I couldn't get past the first page. And I'm the kind of person where I'm like, okay, it's not me. It must be the way this book is written. So got rid of that book, picked up another book out of my Barnes & Noble bag and attempted to read that book. And I couldn't get past page 2. All of that was because my brain was so foggy. And I kept saying, oh, it's the books, it's the books, it's not me. It was me all that time. So anyway, once Dr. Khan received back all of the pathology, and he biopsied the mass that was in my neck, he sent me for several diagnostic tests and like a PET scan. I had to do a sestamibi scan, ultrasounds, kidney ultrasounds, because also too, when your calcium is super elevated, one of the things you're at risk for having kidney stones. Thankfully, I didn't have any kidney stones. And Dr. Khan also encouraged me and told me, not even encouraged me, he basically told me, you must drink a gallon of water a day. He said, you have to drink that much water because your kidneys are going to need help filtering out all this calcium that you have in your system. If not, it can sit and calcify and form stones. So I was drinking water like crazy, which was fine because I was super thirsty. And I guess that's the reason why, even before I saw Dr. Khan, I was always so thirsty. Remember I said I was always drinking water, water, water. I never had appetite. That was my body's way of signaling, I need help. Like my kidneys was like, come on, I need this hydration. And when I think about my scenario, I can't help but think how amazing God has designed and created our bodies, which is another reason why I try very hard to take care of my body in what I eat and when I exercise. When I fall off of my routine, when I'm eating sugary foods, I say to myself, you are doing God a disservice because God has created your body to work so perfectly, and look at what you're doing to it. But our bodies are amazing and we have to thank God for that. So after Dr. Khan worked me up, he referred me to an ENT surgeon, Dr. Rodriguez. He said, you need to go see Dr. Rodriguez because you're going to have surgery to remove that parathyroid tumor / adenoma. Now, all of my work, all of my biopsy results, all of that came back negative. They said it was benign. It was not cancer. At that time, they didn't deem it to be cancerous. So I think it was early September or late August. No, it was like the first week in September. I was scheduled to have surgery with Dr. Rodriguez. I checked into the hospital and Dr. Rodriguez went in and he performed a left parathyroidectomy. So remember, we have 4 parathyroid glands and one of mine grew into a huge tumor that was secreting all that PTH hormone. So because this one gland was just doing so much work, my other 3 parathyroid glands went to sleep. They went to sleep. They were like, all right, this one right here has taken our jobs. We don't need to work. We're going to lay low because he right here is doing all the work. So once Dr. Rodriguez went in and removed this tumor, he removed this tumor. After surgery, my calcium levels plummeted, dropped. I don't even know how low it dropped, but it went from like a 17 down to maybe like a 3 or 4. It was so low. And I had symptoms of low calcium. And symptoms of hypocalcemia, which is low calcium, is tingling, numbness and tingling of the face. Like you feel like ants running all over your face. You can have cardiac issues. Some people have like twitching, seizures can be a possibility. So after surgery, I was admitted to the ICU and I spent 6 days in the ICU receiving intravenous calcium and taking Tums to wait. I had to wait. My body basically had to wait until those other 3 parathyroid glands woke up and started secreting PTH again. Because remember, this one was doing all the work, got removed. So these other 3 had to slowly wake up, slowly wake up again to achieve some level of balance in my body. And because of that, like I said, I spent 6 days in the ICU. So that was that. Surgery went well. Post-operatively, I did fine. I resumed a normal life after that without any issues. Up until 2022. 2022, what I will say though is that whole incident caused me to become more in tune with my body and with my health. Meaning that after 2016, your girl was not missing any of her primary care appointments, okay? Dr. Loomis and, well, Dr. Khan, I followed up with Dr. Khan every 6 months just so he can run labs, check my, my thyroid blood work, my parathyroids, check my calcium, check my PTH. But I also followed up with Dr. Loomis, who's my primary care doctor. I followed up with him yearly. Every April, because my birthday's in April, I would go see Dr. Loomis and have my full complete physical. I was not playing. I'm like, I almost died. Like I literally was near death at that point if I had not gone to see Dr. Loomis, I'm pretty sure this would have eventually turned fatal, or I probably would have ended up in kidney failure or something like that. So everything went well up until 2022 when I went for I went to have blood work drawn. And I think it was because of nurse practitioner school. I had to get blood work. And my calcium came back slightly elevated. Now, remember I said normal calcium is anywhere from between 8 and 10. My calcium came back at like 10.9. Slightly elevated. So Dr. Loomis didn't really pay it no mind. All right. And I was just like, all right, you know, whatever. And, you know, we just gonna see how things play out. But at that time, I was also on TikTok quite a bit. And I had one person send me a message asking me, hey, you need to go get your thyroid checked because your neck looks enlarged. And I was like, really? You think so? I think I gained a little bit of weight. And they were like, no, you really should go look at it. Then not too long after that, someone else messaged me. And they were like, hey, have you got your thyroid checked? I said, okay, you don't have to tell me more than twice, okay? You don't have to tell me twice. Instantaneously, I made an appointment with Dr. Khan. So Dr. Khan was no longer at the office that I originally saw him at. He moved further. But guess what? Your girl was going to see Dr. Khan because no one knew my history like Dr. Khan. And because Dr. Khan is the kind of physician that will tell you to call me if you have any problems. No one else is getting my endocrinology business but Dr. Khan. So I went to see Dr. Khan. And he said, yeah, he looked at my labs that was drawn earlier on in the year by my PCP. And he was like, yeah, your calcium is slightly elevated. He was like, let's work that up and see what's going on. Worked it up. When Dr. Khan got his lab work back, my calcium was like 11.2. So he was like, these numbers are slowly creeping up. We need to start, you know, doing a whole workup again. So we're talking about biopsy. We're talking about more scans, more blood work. And he said to me, he was like, you need to do some genetic testing. And I was like, all right, fine. Sorry, y'all, the camera had to cool down. So it said it was internally too hot. So I don't even know where I left off. But I think I left off with Dr. Khan working me up, right? So yeah, so Dr. Khan was like, this seems to be happening again. So what I'm going to do is you have two options. I'm going to refer you either to the NIH or you can go to Hopkins. The Hopkins is going to be closer because it's here in Baltimore. The NIH is more towards DC side. So you decide. He was like, if you go to the NIH, everything is going to be free because they have a special program where they do research and they take in people like you. Everything is free. Or you can go to Hopkins and use your insurance and just, you know, make the co-pays. I opted for Hopkins because it's in Baltimore, it's closer, my family's here, so I didn't want to put a burden on having people having to come all the way to DC to see me or pick me up and drop me off. So I chose Hopkins, and Dr. Khan referred me to Dr. Morris Wiseman. Her full name is Dr. Lila Fran Morris Wiseman. Her last name is hyphenated. I guess Dr. Wiseman was like, look, my parents worked very hard for me to get this degree. I'm keeping their last name. But anyway, he referred me to her and she got all of my records from back in 2016 and had the pathologist at Hopkins look at it. And what they found was that, I told you guys previously that back in 2016, at the time when those pathologists from the other institution looked at the pathology in the tissue, they said it was benign. However, based on the Hopkins pathologist, they said no. This was definitely a parathyroid cancer. And, you know, I've gotten questions from people or comments from people, especially on like TikTok. They were like, oh, you need to sue them. You need to sue those people. How could they misdiagnose it? But for me, that's just part of medicine. It wasn't intentionally. Parathyroid cancer is very hard to diagnose. Super, super hard. But of course, you know, Hopkins, they're the big dogs. So because of that, Dr. Wiseman said, when they removed that tumor a couple years ago, because they did not take the entire thyroid, leftover cells were still there and started growing again into that, you know, the cancer just basically started doing what it did, multiplying. And that's the reason why I'm having the recurrence. So she said the left thyroidectomy would be the best option. I was like, take the whole thyroid. How about that? So we can just eliminate any problems. And she said, no, medically, it's not necessary. And that is why I went in and I had the thyroidectomy. Now, a lot of people thought, or a lot of people still think, I had thyroid cancer. Initially, no, it was parathyroid. It was the glands that sits on top of the thyroid that had the cancer. However, I just had my post-op appointment with Dr. Wiseman, and she told me that some of the parathyroid cancer did infiltrate the left thyroid. So she's happy that she removed all of it, washed up my lymph nodes, and I should be good to go. I am going to have a repeat PET scan in 3 months, and I'm going to continue following up with Dr. Khan, who now has his own independent practice closer to my home. So I'll be following that man wherever he goes. The biggest lessons that I've learned from this entire situation, starting from 2016, is that hustle culture, work culture, y'all can keep it. I want nothing to do with it, because I was literally working myself to the ground for what? For what? For money or for material things? Meanwhile, my health was suffering. I was working so much. Even if I wanted to go to the doctor, I already committed to these amount of days. I committed to the students to take them to clinical. I did not have time in there for myself. So I learned that working, trying to get all of this money, it's not worth it. The other thing that I learned is the importance of keeping up with your primary care doctor. Everyone should have a primary care physician. Now, I know healthcare in America, it's not the best, it's not ideal because of insurance issues, but if you do have insurance, please follow up with your primary care doctor on a yearly basis. Because even if you feel fine, you think that you're healthy, your family history is not crazy for any kind of abnormalities, genetic issues, you might think I'm healthy and I don't have anything brewing, because that's what I thought. I just thought I hurt my back, not knowing I had a whole electrolyte imbalance going on in my body that I would have never found out had I not gone to the doctor. And you guys, it took me forever to go see the doctor. So that was the biggest lesson. The other thing that I learned is that we talk about angels, and honestly, I think God definitely puts people within your path who's there to help you, who's there to guide you, who's there to help and to save you from certain things. And that is how I view Dr. Khan. Dr. Khan is my savior. My primary care doctor also, I'm very loyal to him, Dr. Loomis, because Dr. Loomis could have easily said, here's the number, call and make an appointment. No, Dr. Loomis was like, I made your appointment and you're going to that appointment tomorrow. I don't care what's going on in your life, but you're going to that appointment. So I am always hyper aware for people who I encounter who help move me from point A to point B, because I know that's God right there. I definitely know that's God. And another thing I learned was to have faith in medicine. I know there's a lot of mistrust in medicine because of just the history and, different things that has happened with different institutions. I, for one, was not a big fan of Hopkins, but your girl, I am definitely grateful to the staff and the people at Hopkins, especially Dr. Wiseman, for going in and just taking control of this situation. I am forever indebted and grateful to these individuals that has played a role in my care. I am also very grateful for social media, because if it was not for the people on TikTok asking me, hey, your thyroid, go get your thyroid check, something's going on with your thyroid, I probably would have brushed it off because I wasn't having any symptoms. And that's another thing. Dr. Khan was like, well, thankfully you've been checking up because we caught this very early as far as your blood work and, everything goes. So those were the lessons that I've learned. I've also learned that health is definitely wealth. Prioritizing your health is something that we must all do, because what good is material gain if you don't have your health? What good is $1 million in the bank? As much as I would love to have $1 million in the bank, look, give me 100,000 in the bank right now and I'll be good. But what good is material gain, and what good is money if your health is suffering? Health is wealth. So take care of yourselves. Thank you all for watching. I hope my story provided a little lesson, especially for those of you maybe nursing students when you're doing endocrine. Just think of me and you can use my story as an example, and I will catch you all in the next vlog or in the next sit down video. Thank you for watching.